Would you like to find gold in Colorado? Colorado is a gold-rich state that has produced many millions of ounces of gold. And that's why we're taking a close look at the opportunities for you to find some gold there. I'm Chris Ralph, the professional prospector, and today we're looking at the gold, the mines, and the geology of the state of Colorado. Now, Colorado is one of the more productive states for gold. It comes in third among the 50 states, behind Nevada and California. Third place, Colorado. So it's produced lots and lots of gold because those other two states have produced tremendous amounts, and Colorado's produced quite a bit for itself. The total gold produced in Colorado is somewhere around 43 million ounces. That's a lot of tons of gold. So you should be able to get some for yourself there too. The majority of Colorado's gold deposits are found in a northeast trending belt known as the Colorado Mineral Belt. It's located in the mountainous western part of the state, and it extends from someplace near Boulder, south and west, into the San Juan region in the southwest part of the state. But this belt does not hold all of the mines in Colorado. In fact, the most productive district in Colorado, the Cripple Creek area, is located actually south and west of the main mineral belt. The Cripple Creek area is basically an epithermal mineral belt and includes, of course, Cripple Creek, the biggest gold producer in the state, and other districts like Creed and some others. Colorado has produced about 1.8 million ounces of placer gold, and recorded amounts of gold have come from more than 36 Colorado counties. The largest and most productive deposits of placer gold in Colorado are from Summit, Lake, Park, Clear Creek, Gilpin, and Chaffee counties, all of which had good production of placer gold. In the historic prospecting of Colorado, usually the placers were found first, and the gold-bearing veins or sources of the placer gold were found soon afterwards. A lot of the veins were oxidized at the surface, meaning the sulfide minerals were oxidized to other types of minerals, so that they were easier for the early day miners to process. Some of the placers were deeply weathered, and so the miners were able to basically hydraulic mine the gold lodes in place because the surrounding country rock and the lodes themselves were so deeply weathered. But most of the gold produced before 1869 was basically what they call oxidized lodes, like I say, for material where the sulfides have already been oxidized and changed to other minerals, which makes it easier to extract the gold and silver values. Let's take a look at some Colorado gold.
Here's a piece of beautiful wire gold from the Breckenridge district in Colorado, and this is a district for which it's famous for wire gold like this. And as I said, many museums have specimens that are of this nature. They're valued at much higher than just the bullion value of the gold. Colorado does produce some nice, rounded, nugget-looking gold too, and this is probably one of the largest specimens of rounded, water-worn nugget gold from Colorado. It weighs a little more than 12 ounces. Here's some more standard-looking nuggets. These are from the Leadville district, from the famed California Gulch area, where so much placer gold was mined in the early days. But as I mentioned, so much of Colorado's gold is from its hard rock mines. Of the 43 million ounces that Colorado has produced, only about 1.8 million was from placer. So you're talking 4 to 5% of the total gold produced was placer. That means that a lot of the gold was from hard rock sources like this with quartz, and good to find this kind of gold. This kind of gold shows up in dumps from time to time and is easily detected with a metal detector. Not all of the gold from the Colorado hard rock mines looked like, the piece I just showed you with gold in quartz. Some of it looked like this. Now, this particular specimen, it would have been originally mostly pyrite with some quartz, and the pyrite has been oxidized to rust. And so basically you see the brown colored rusty material that once was pyrite but has been turned to iron oxides, and you see the beautiful gold remaining that was in among the pyrite originally. The gold is unaffected. And so specimens like this are to be found also. This beautiful specimen is from the San Juan area in the southwest part of the state. But again, this is a piece with some quartz and a lot of pyrite that's been close enough to the surface that air and water have affected it and basically turned the pyrite into rust, into iron oxides. But the gold is unaffected. And so you have this beautiful leaf gold piece. Again, this is worth a lot more than just the gold value, the bullion value, because leaf gold is highly prized. So not all Colorado gold looks exactly like nuggets. Some does, but some of the nice gold that can be found in Colorado looks more like pieces like this.
Beginning in the early 1800s, Colorado, or at least the Colorado area, was explored by trappers, special expeditions, and other pioneers. But most of these early day pioneers just really didn't take into account the potential for minerals in the state of Colorado. It wasn't until a little bit later in the 1800s, approaching the mid-1800s, when groups of Cherokee Indians began to interact with pioneers and stuff down in the Missouri area, bringing them little small lots of gold nuggets as trade. Well, the gold nuggets fired up the imaginations of those early day farmers and that kind of stuff, and they were thinking they need to go search for the source of the gold. The Indians said the gold came from the upper Platte River, what was known to the pioneers as the Platte River. And so this stimulated them to go head up that way to search for gold. And beginning in the late 1850s, a number of parties started to do this, especially in 1858 and 1859. And in January of 1859, a guy named George Jackson made the first discovery of paying quantities of placer gold at the intersection of Chicago Creek and Clear Creek near the present-day site of the town of Idaho Springs. It was the first substantial gold discovery in the state of Colorado, but a number of incredible finds were made shortly thereafter, and many rich and significant discoveries were made in the next few years. Miners spread out to explore the Front Range area and discovered rich placers at Empire, Georgetown, of course, Idaho Springs, Breckenridge, Black Hawk, and other diggings. Other prospectors moved up the Arkansas River and discovered rich gold deposits at California Gulch near what is now known as the Leadville District. In Colorado, as in most places, the placer deposits were worked first because they were easier to work. But the miners soon started searching for the source of the gold, and many important vein deposits were discovered. The movement from placers to the lode deposits did not take long in Colorado. In California, it took some years, but in Colorado, it was maybe a year or less. And later in 1859, a Georgia prospector named John Gregory made the first lode discovery in a narrow ravine which became known as Gregory's Gulch, near the present-day site of Black Hawk. Let's take a look at some historic mining in Colorado and how knowing what the early day miners did can help you find more gold when you go out to prospect in Colorado.
The miners quickly turned to hydraulic mining because hydraulic mining had been developed and perfected in California about 5 years earlier. And so the miners in Colorado, they knew what to do. They could use the flow of water and gravity to move the gravels into their sluice boxes, and whatever wasn't easily washed in by the flow of water by the hydraulic monitors, they would just shovel into the sluice box by hand. The high-pressure water in hydraulic mining could literally wash away and blast down mountains full of gravel that they would run through their sluice boxes and collect the gold that was in the gravels. This made a great way for processing gravels that weren't actually super high grade. You could process the gravel so cheaply that relatively low-grade gravels were still very economic to work. Many of the early day Colorado workings were in very narrow areas and were hydraulically mining just short distances, short widths of material. And this is typical of what they call seam diggings, where you have a vein that has significant gold in it and the rock around it is well decomposed. You can literally wash away the vein and the rock with it and run them into your sluice box where you can recover the gold without having to go through a milling process because everything has been so broken down by long weathering in deep into the mountain. Because this type of operation was a little less efficient, a lot of gold attached to quartz or with rock on it would actually wash through the sluice and out into the tailings. If I were living in Colorado in an area where this type of work had happened, I would be for sure checking out the tailings of operations like this with my metal detector, because there would be gold to be found. Even into the early 1900s, long after they'd stopped hydraulic mining, when they were using bucket line dredges like this, there's still potential. The coarse piles that are put out from behind these dredges are well worth checking with a metal detector, but be sure that you have a detector with good discrimination, because often these dredge piles are just loaded with iron trash. And as I've mentioned, the metal detector has great potential for the old hard rock mine dumps. In areas like this, in Gregory Gulch, these buildings are all long gone. But the mine dumps, the dumps where the gold may be, they're still there waiting for you. And especially in a state like Colorado, where the great majority of the gold, more than 95%, was hard rock source gold, the dumps are a huge potential, and a lot of people ignore these mine dumps. So don't forget about the mine dumps. The buildings are gone, but the dumps are still there.
Now, I've mentioned the Front Range Gold Belt, the main gold belt of Colorado that extends from up near Boulder, south and west, down to San Juan and the southwest part of the state. And I mentioned the epithermal belt around Cripple Creek and some of the areas around there. It's important to understand these different kinds of deposits. The ones, because they are very different types, the ones that are in the main mineral belt that parallels the Front Range and goes through the Rockies, that is a belt of deposits that are called orogenic, because we're going to talk about the geology now. We talked a little bit about the mining. We're going to talk more about the gold geology. Those are called orogenic deposits, and the orogenic has to do with the word for mountain building. So, you see the deposits are in the mountains. It's deposits that have to do with mountain building, and they're associated with a mountain building series of events called the Laramide Mountain Building Event, which created the Rockies. The Cripple Creek District and the areas around it, Creed and that sort of thing, are a different kind of deposit. They're called epithermal deposits, and they're related to volcanism. Now, that doesn't mean that they're perched on the side of a volcano, but it does mean that they're found in areas where there is some volcanic activity, generally speaking. And like I say, Cripple Creek is the largest gold producer in Colorado, but this epithermal belt also includes Creed and Summitville and several other areas. And they're all related to younger volcanic rocks. Let's take a look at the geology of Colorado, starting with the Front Range group. Now, the Front Ranges of the Rockies are underlain by continental, igneous, and metamorphic rocks, including bent and contorted schists and interlayered gneiss and migmatite, sheets and dikes and masses of granite and granodiorite. Now, we talk about contacts of rock, and sometimes contacts of rock look like here's two different rocks and they come together like this. But I saw places in Colorado, and this is not uncommon either, where the coming together of two different rocks looks more like this. A leg of one going into the leg of the other, and instead of being a nice single sharp boundary, it's a zone of meeting. So, generally speaking, these rocks fill the northwest to southeast trending fractures and faults of Precambrian igneous metamorphic rocks. The Precambrian rocks are intruded by a variety of tertiary, younger plutons and dikes, and the mineralization ranges in age from Cretaceous through late Tertiary. The veins generally run a few thousand feet in strike length, but do vary somewhat. The thickness runs from a few inches to nearly 40 feet. The most common ore minerals in these veins are base metal sulfides like pyrite, galena, chalcopyrite, sphalerite, and tennantite. They contain a variety of different mineral mixes, but are generally grouped as a pyrite quartz veins, copper veins containing quartz, pyrite, chalcopyrite, tennantite, and minor galena and sphalerite, 3 lead zinc veins that contain quartz, pyrite, galena, sphalerite, and a small amount of chalcopyrite, which is a copper-bearing mineral. And then 4 is lead zinc carbonate veins that contain galena, sphalerite, and small amounts again of chalcopyrite. All 4 of these types do contain gold, but the most important gold mines are in the lead zinc type. Gold occurs partly as discrete fine particles and are tied up in the sulfide minerals. A few gold telluride veins were found in the southeast part of the Central City District in Gilpin County. The gold is most commonly associated with the pyrite and the chalcopyrite minerals, while the silver is more closely associated with the tennantite and galena. Let me show you a couple of images to help you understand this district.
Here's a drawing of the Colorado mineral belt, shown in yellow here, and you can see a huge number of districts fall within this northeast to southwest trending belt of mineral deposits, but not the whole thing. It's not all mineralized. You can see that there's quite a few mines up in the northeast part, and there's some mines way far down in the southeast or southwest part, but kind of in between there's only a few, and actually in toward the southwest there's actually a section 100 miles long where there's just no mineralization. So you can't just walk into this area and decide that, oh well, there's going to be mineral everywhere. But it certainly encases a lot of the famous mining districts of Colorado, and so much of the gold has been found here. So it's a well-known area, and it kind of parallels the front ranges of the Rockies, and it's related to the mountain building episodes that created the Rockies. A lot of the rocks in the region are metamorphic rocks like this that have been subject to huge amounts of heat and pressure, even to the point where you can see there's kind of been some folding and melding around. So these rocks have undergone lots of heat and pressure, and that's part of the mountain building process that leads to the mineral deposits.
Okay, let's take a look now at the Cripple Creek epithermal belt. After Carlin in Nevada and the Homestake area in South Dakota, Cripple Creek is the third most productive district in the United States. It's produced huge amounts of gold and continues to be mined for gold to the present day. The ores here have a much different origin than those found in the Front Range area of the Rockies. The gold deposits of Cripple Creek were formed within a steep-walled volcanic caldera about 4 miles long and 2 miles wide. Explosive fracturing caused by a series of volcanic explosions and later subsidence produced shear zones in the breccia and adjacent Precambrian rocks. Still hot and still maybe even molten rocks down below provided the heat source to drive the liquids that formed the veins. And these fractures and dikes that were intruded provided the conduit for the hot liquids to move upward and form gold. The ore deposits are, like I say, epithermal in nature and relatively short individual veins that are located along persistent vein zones. So there may be a long vein zone, but there may be short veins here and there in the zone. And those were what were mined in the early days at Cripple Creek. Most of the veins at Cripple Creek were high-grade zones mineralized with gold, silver, and copper tellurides. Pyrite, sphalerite, galena, and tetrahedrite were minor minerals there. The gangue minerals were chiefly quartz and fluorite, with dolomite, anchorite, and celestite. The most spectacular discovery at Cripple Creek was the famed Crescent Bug. The opening in this cavity was roughly 25 feet by 12 feet by 40 feet high. Discovered in November of 1914, the cavity was lined with rich gold telluride minerals, quartz, and other minerals as well. By the end of the year, nearly 20,000 ounces of gold had been mined from this small area. Now, I just recently did a video about gem and crystal pockets. I'll put a link to it up here, and it talks about the kinds of pockets that kind of vugs, openings in veins and other systems that this particular one belonged to. And this shows that not only is it just valuable crystals that can be found, sometimes rich gold and silver minerals can be found in these vugs too. Other mining districts in this particular area include Creed and Silver Cliff. And let me show you a couple of images that'll help you understand this a little better.
So here's the location of the Cripple Creek epithermal belt. And you can see it's smaller and doesn't cover as large an area, but there's some very important districts here. Of course, at the north end is the Cripple Creek district itself, but toward the south you have Creed and Summitville. These are areas that have both significant gold, some of them, and other ones significant silver. Creed was a significant silver deposit. But all of these areas are closely associated with volcanic rocks, not necessarily with volcanoes, but with volcanic rocks. And some of them, the mineralization is in the volcanic rocks, and some just near the volcanic rocks in other types of rocks. Just to show how rich these areas can be, these epithermal areas, this is a boulder from the Summitville district. This is not actually from Cripple Creek, it's from Summitville, and it shows highly altered and acid-leached volcanic rock with, of course, a whole load of gold. Now, there's no scale here, so let me tell you, this is a 113-pound boulder, and the gold within it is estimated at roughly 316 ounces. And you might say, well, this was an early day discovery, but no, this was discovered in 1975, not the deposit. Of course, Summitville was worked in the 1800s, but this boulder was found in 1975. So it's still worth to go up and explore some of these old districts. Imagine a find like this if you were to make one today.
Okay, we've talked a little bit about Colorado gold geology. Let's talk a little bit more about Colorado placer mining. While by far the most of the gold mined in Colorado came from the lode mines, Colorado still has a number of significant placer producers. 6 counties in Colorado produce 50,000 ounces of gold or more. And these include Gilpin, which did produce 50,000 ounces, mostly from the Gregory diggings and other placer areas around Blackhawk, Central City, Gamble Gulch, and the Perigo mine area. Chaffee County yielded 90,000 ounces, mostly from the Cache Creek area near Granite, but also other placers that were worked along the Arkansas River, Lost Canyon Gulch, Chalk Creek, Cottonwood Creek, Pine Creek, and Birchies Gulch. Gold Run Gulch, Gilson Gulch, and Oregon Gulch, and Ritchie's Patch. That's a lot of different areas in Chaffee County that were important placer producers. Clear Creek County produced 140,000 ounces of placer, most of which are from Clear Creek or its tributaries, including Chicago Creek near Idaho Springs, and additional placers that were mined in Nevada and Illinois gulches and Missouri Flats. Park County yielded 350,000 ounces of placer gold, mostly from deposits in the Fairplay, Tarryall, and Alma districts. Tarryall Creek and the South Platte River have both been highly productive. Lake County produced 360,000 ounces of placer gold, principally from Iowa and California gulches. They're tributaries of the Arkansas River in the Leadville district. Some gold was also produced from the Arkansas River Valley. Summit County in Colorado is by far the most productive placer gold county in the state. It's produced more than 750,000 ounces of placer gold. The Breckenridge district was the major producer here. Rich gold placers were discovered along Georgia Gulch on the north side of Farncombe Hill in 1859, and soon afterwards placers were discovered in many streams and gulches in the district. Farncombe Hill is famous for its rich deposits of native gold, which has supplied specimens of wire and leaf gold to many museums and collectors throughout the world. There are also bench gravels in the area that were mined by hydraulic methods and deep placers that were worked by bucket line dredge. Lesser amounts of placer gold were taken from McNulty Gulch in the 10 Mile district. So Colorado has a lot of very productive areas and a lot of very productive counties, and of course a bunch of other counties that produce less than 50,000 ounces, but hey, 50,000 ounces is a large amount, so even 10,000 is still plenty of placer gold. So there's a lot of opportunities in Colorado, and so let's now take a look at prospecting in Colorado. One problem that prospectors have looking for gold in Colorado is the large amount of private land and patented mining property. Combined with the fact that the majority of the gold from Colorado was mined from hard rock sources, not from placer sources, the access situation is just a little bit more difficult in Colorado for prospectors looking to find a little bit of gold for themselves. Some of the gold fields in other states have considerably more public land in the known gold areas, and so prospectors have more opportunities. Still, there's lots of places for prospectors to go in the Colorado area. One of the things that I would like to emphasize in prospecting in Colorado, because so much of the gold came from hard rock sources, and a lot of the gold in the hard rock sources was fairly coarse, at least plenty coarse enough to be seen by a metal detector. If I lived in Colorado and I was going to do most of my prospecting in the state of Colorado, I would have a good metal detector and be looking at some of the old mine dumps, because a lot of times, and I've done this in Nevada and California and elsewhere, where you have a productive gold mine that produces some fairly coarse gold, sometimes gold goes out on the dump unintentionally. The miners never intended to throw gold on the dump, but they sometimes did stuff like that unintentionally, and that stuff can be found with a metal detector. Another thing that miners did in a lot of smaller mines is they would mine through there, and because they weren't big enough to have their own mill and crush and process the ore for themselves, they would set aside piles to be shipped to a custom mill where they could pay the miller a fee for processing their ore, and then they would get the value of the ore out of it. So shipping ore, you didn't want to ship 5 pounds or 50 pounds or even 100 pounds of ore to a mill unless it was super rich. So sometimes if it wasn't super duper rich, they would set aside a pile so that they could ship 5 tons or 10 tons or 20 tons to a custom mill, and that would work out at a better cost for them, for the miller to process it. So you would see sometimes, because I've seen this in Nevada and California and elsewhere, they would set aside pile of ore, and sometimes they never got around to actually shipping it. They never got enough to ship, or they never, something happened and they didn't get to it. And so those piles of ore rock set aside for later shipment are the best place to take your metal detector, because those almost always have some gold in them. So just a hint, just a tip. If I were in Colorado, not only would I do placer, because I certainly would do placer, panning and sluicing and all those things, but I would also be doing metal detecting of old hard rock mine dumps. Now, my first recommendation for guys that want to get into Colorado prospecting, if you're new to prospecting or still fairly new to prospecting, my first recommendation is to look into joining a prospecting club. There are several of those clubs in Colorado, and they almost always have claims available for their club members to go look and pan and sluice and do whatever, metal detect for gold. And that also gives you a real opportunity to go out and get your hands dirty and find some good gold for yourself. And I did a whole video on it. That's why I want to encourage especially new guys to go out and join a club and get involved and learn from, because all the clubs always have more experienced guys there, ladies that are more knowledgeable, and you can get in there and learn from the people that have been doing this for a while. So I put a link to the club video that I did a while back, because I think there's some ideas there for you that will help you get out and find gold successfully. But if you don't want to join a club, or you can't join a club, or there's some other issue, and you just want to know some areas where you can go out and go gold panning for yourself and see if you can find a little something, I've got some suggestions for you, and we'll go into those suggestions right now. The first is Clear Creek County Park in Jefferson County. It allows free panning, sluicing, and small-scale prospecting at Clear Creek Canyon Park. The area is just west of Golden along Highway 6 along Clear Creek. The open space park allows for panning and sluicing below the high water marks. In other words, they don't want you digging up high, but below the high water marks of the creek that the creek normally flows in, you can get in there and do a little digging and find yourself some gold. They also want you to fill in your holes and don't leave any sign of disturbance. There are some private claims in this general area, and prospectors need to stay off those private claims. But there's area along parts of The area along Clear Creek is in some places is steep, and the parking is limited. So just be careful and get out there and have a good time. But that's an area open for you to go panning. The Fairplay Town Beach in Park County is another area for free panning. The town of Fairplay is located at a higher elevation in central Colorado within Park County, approximately 85 miles west of Denver, and also 85 miles west-northwest of Colorado Springs. The placer deposits here were known as the Fairplay diggings, and they were first worked back in 1859. Now, the town requires a permit even for basic panning at Fairplay Beach, but the permit is free, and the permit needs to be validated by the clerk at the town office on Front Street, even though the whole process can actually be handled by the mail. So the permit form is available online on the Fairplay Town website. A very extensive area of placer deposits that are very popular with prospectors in Colorado is the area along the Arkansas River. Placer deposits exist along the Arkansas River for a considerable length, and for the most of this area, the gold in Arkansas, the Arkansas area, is fine in size. In other words, I've seen pictures of gold from the Arkansas River, and it's very, very fine. It's small particles. It's not big nuggets. In fact, nuggets up to about a gram in size are very rare. Most of it is what most prospectors would call dust. Much of the headwater area of the Arkansas River it comes down from the Leadville area, and along the Arkansas River is a designated recreation area. The recreation area is managed by the Colorado State Park System, and they do allow gold panning and small-scale prospecting. They actually do allow dredging, or at least they did, but the BLM requires a notice for dredging here, but the permits are free, and they allow intake nozzles up to 4 inches. Power systems no larger than 8 horsepower. There's a patchwork here in the Arkansas River. There's a patchwork of BLM land, park land, private property, and some investigation is necessary to see what areas along the Arkansas River are actually open for work. Again, that's why knowing somebody in a club can be helpful, or being part of a club. The GPAA has a number, and that GPAA is a club, has a number of claims on the Arkansas River, and the Gold Prospectors of Colorado Club also has several claims here in the Buena Vista area. There's also a number of nice campgrounds and good facilities for the visitor who wants to try his hand at prospecting in this area. Probably my favorite area that's open for prospecting, basically it's a set-aside area for prospectors to come and try their hand to find some gold, is the Cache Creek placer area located near the town of Graniteville in northern Chaffee County. The BLM has set aside a good-sized parcel. This is a historic mining area that was worked in the 1800s, and the BLM set aside part of their area of wildlife habitat and wetlands to be open for prospecting use. Some coarser gold nuggets have been found here. It's not just dust. The BLM has established certain restrictions and does require a special permit, but like the Arkansas River dredge permits, it's not difficult to obtain one, and much of the designated prospecting requires access by foot. Now, let me show you some pictures and we'll talk about it.
Here's a map of the Cache Creek area showing that it's just a couple miles to the west of Granite, and there's county roads and other roads to lead out to the site where you can do some panning and sluicing. Here's the sign at the end of the road. You come to this, and then beyond this, you have to kind of hike in to access where you can do some panning and sluicing, but it's not very far. I mean, it pretty much is right there, and it's not a big bad hike up a steep trail. It's not bad. So this is a great place, and I highly recommend it.
Some other areas that are open to prospecting in Colorado include Texas Creek, that there's a BLM set-aside prospecting area near Canyon City, the Pinion Bridge recreational placer mining area near Naturia, the Norwood Bridge recreational placer mining area near Norwood, and the Point Bar prospecting site near Pueblo. Now, for those who are local to the Denver metro area, there's several places that can be reached fairly easily for panning. And just west of town, the Arapahoe Bar County Park, or it's Arapahoe Bar Panning Park, is also available for people to go pan and do a little prospecting. Now, The rules sometimes change in any area. This is true whether you're in Nevada or California, Colorado, whatever, especially areas where local governments are involved, and a lot of these are parks and that kind of thing. Politicians decide, oh, well, let's not do that anymore. And I put out a video that, tells the information, but, who knows, in a week or a month or a year or a decade, somebody may decide to change the rules. So check into the rules before you go out to these places, because it's probably worth your while. Now, in all of that, I talked about areas that are open, and I talked about, finding claims and that kind of stuff. There are some prospectors who may want to look into staking their own mining claims, and that's certainly possible. Even in the hard rock areas, you can stake a claim over an old prospect and then be set aside to, use your metal detector or do whatever in that area, try and find some gold for yourself. But the staking of a mining claim is a whole specialty and different set of knowledge unto itself. And I did a couple of videos to help prospectors learn the basics of staking your own mining claims. I've staked mining claims. In fact, I got mining claims that I stake that I lease out to mining companies, and I get paid for that. But I also have claims that I go out and prospect and rockhound on for my own self, for my own fun. So if you want to get into staking claims, I've got a video that I'm going to put up above that I link to. That's the part one. The part one is the basics of going out and staking a mining claim and some basic information about that. And then I also have a part two video, which I will also put a link up to, and I'll put links to all these in the descriptions below. But the part two is a little more advanced, gives a little bit more information. And if you really want to get into maybe staking a claim for yourself, you'll want to watch both of those. Now, as far as current operations of ongoing large-scale gold mining in the state of Colorado, unfortunately, I think at this time there's only one, but it's a pretty big scale. It's the Colorado Cripple Creek and Victor open pit mine located in the Cripple Creek district of Teller County. It's currently the only active large-scale operation. It's run by Newmont. And literally hundreds of people in that area work for Newmont. They mine lower grade ores that the miners couldn't have worked in the early days at Cripple Creek, but they can work by, mining thousands of tons and processing them by heap leach methods with cyanide. Although the ores that are being mined contain only a few hundredths of an ounce per ton of rock, the large amounts of material that are handled and the significant production and low cost allow them to make a profit on this low-grade rock. The mine is by far the largest employer in Teller County.
Here's a quick look at that giant open pit mine in the Cripple Creek district. It's been running for years, but you can see it takes up the size of a mountain. It's gigantic, but they've produced a huge amount of gold out of this over the years.
There are also a number of small sand and gravel operations along the Platte River and other parts of the state that produce small amounts of gold as a byproduct. But these really aren't gold mines. They're aggregate gravel and sand operations. And they produce a little gold because the sand and gravel that they mine to sell as sand and gravel has a little bit of gold in it. And they put parts of their plant so they can collect that gold. Now, in Colorado, as it is true everywhere with prospecting, what you know makes all the difference in what you find as far as gold. And guys that are new and don't know much, it's going to be tougher for you unless you have somebody to point the way. That's why I wrote a book that gives you the skills and the information that I have gleaned from more than 40 years of prospecting, plus, a degree in mining engineering that I got from the Mackey School of Mines. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about my book because it's basically an encyclopedia of gold prospecting, and I'll tell you a little bit more about it right now.
So this is my book, Fistfull of Gold. You can see it's an encyclopedia distilling down my 45 plus years of prospecting experience plus my degree into the parts that you need to know. I spent most of 10 years writing this. It was not just a simple effort that, I sat down and wrote it. You can see it's like 250,000 words. It's not something you're going to read through in a day or maybe even a week or more. but it's got a lot of information and reference material that you can come back to. You can read it once and read it again and get more out of it because there's just that much depth of material in this. I wrote this book because I want you to have the skills to go out and find fistfuls of gold for yourself. And if you have the skills and know what you're doing and get out in the field and make a real effort, you can find significant gold. It's not easy. I'm not going to tell you that because, gold, it wouldn't be, close to $2,000 an ounce, which is what it is right now. It wouldn't be so expensive if it was easy to find. It's not easy. You just can't walk out into an old gold field and start picking up nuggets. If the gold was easy to see and find, the old timers would have picked it up and taken it themselves. So you got to have skill. You got to know what you're doing. You got to be able to master what it takes to find gold, and you've got to have the persistence and put in the effort to find the material, to find the gold or diamonds or gemstones that you're looking for. Now, this book has geology, it has facts about gold, it has stuff about diamonds and platinum, but it's mostly about gold deposits, how gold deposits form, how placer and nuggets form, all the questions you probably wanted to ask. The book is available on Amazon, and I'll put a link to it in the description below, but you can look up on Amazon, Fistful of Gold, and by Chris Ralph, and find this book. Now, the book, if you look on it, it has a very high rating. It has like a 4.7 or 4.8 out of 5, which is really high. I mean, it's hard to please everybody, but I'm close to a 5 out of 5, not far from it, right? So it's been out. I've sold more than 15,000 copies of this book, and I've had tremendous response, tremendous positive response by the people who buy it. And I think if you buy it, you'll be just as happy with it. Now, in addition to my book, I also have a website that I do, and I'll tell you a little bit more about my website and show you some images from the website right now.
Now, my website is nevadaoutbackgems.com, and I'll put a link to the prospecting page, this prospecting encyclopedia page, down in the description below, but you can find it at Nevada Outback Gems. I sell some jewelry, turquoise, other gemstones there. I don't always keep the inventory perfectly up to date, so if you're interested in anything you see, do contact me first before trying to send me money or anything, because I want you to be able to get what you order. But the website has lots of different stories, old adventures, even some stories, true stories from the old-time miners of the 1800s. So I think it's something you'll find interesting.
The other thing I want to go back to is that all my comments, I want you guys to ask questions on the comments for my videos. I answer 100% of the comments that are made on my videos. Now, sometimes if somebody just says, "Hey, great video, I really enjoyed it," the comment may just be, "Well, I'm really glad you liked it." Or if it's a simple question. And sometimes I get people who ask me questions, I would take a book to answer that question. And I recommend that they just buy the book. But I answer all my questions. I try to help people as much as I can. I'm here to help you. So if you're interested in gaining the skills, if you're interested in knowing what you need to know to be successful, follow along with me. Subscribe to my channel, hit the bell so that they'll let you know when I come out with new videos, and I try to do that pretty much every Saturday morning. And you'll enjoy with me, you'll come along with me, we'll have an adventure together, and we will find some nice gold and see what it's really like getting out in the woods, or the deserts, or the mountains, wherever we land, wherever the gold is, wherever the diamonds are, wherever the platinum is. Come along, we'll have some fun. And I'll see you real soon on the next video.